What if the person you thought you lost forever suddenly stood before you? Claire never thought she would see Daniel again. Not here, not now, not after 3 years of silence that felt like a lifetime. She had spent so many nights convincing herself he was gone for good, that he belonged to a chapter she had closed. Yet there he was. It was a rainy evening in Portland, the kind where the streets looked like mirrors, lit by neon reflections. Claire had tucked herself into a small corner cafe after work, ordering her usual tea, watching people hurry past outside with umbrellas. She was tired, but it was the kind of tired she welcomed. The quiet of the cafe gave her space to breathe, and then she felt it. That strange pull, that unshakable awareness, as if the air itself had shifted. She looked up and then her heart nearly stopped. Daniel. Can one glance bring back everything you tried to forget? He stood just inside the cafe doorway. The light behind him made him look almost unreal. His shoulders were broader than she remembered, his hair a little longer, his face more serious. But the eyes, those were the same, dark, steady, carrying a weight she once knew too well. Claire froze. Her hand gripped the warm cup in front of her, though she couldn't feel the heat anymore. Memories rushed into her mind like a flood. Late-night talks in his old car, promises whispered under the stars, the day he left without a real goodbye. She blinked, half expecting the image to vanish. But no, he was real. He was here, and he was looking straight at her. Her chest tightened. She had dreamed of this moment 1,000 times, sometimes with anger, sometimes with longing. But not like this, not with him standing there, silent, as if caught between staying and turning back. For a few seconds, they didn't move. The noise of the cafe faded. The rain outside became a distant hum, and it felt like the entire world had shrunk to this, him and her. What do you do when the past walks back into your life? Daniel finally stepped forward. Each move closer made her pulse race. He wasn't rushing, he wasn't smiling. His steps were careful, heavy, like a man carrying something he didn't know how to put down. Claire swallowed hard. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. She wanted to stand and leave, but her legs refused. When he reached her table, he stopped. Just stopped. He didn't sit. He didn't speak. His hands were tucked in his jacket pockets, and his eyes, those eyes, stayed fixed on her with a silence louder than words. Claire's voice cracked before she could stop it. Daniel? His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Not yet. Can silence hurt more than words? The space between them was filled with unspoken history. She searched his face, looking for anger, regret, or maybe nothing at all. But she couldn't tell. All she knew was that he had come back, and she had no idea why. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. She hated that after all this time, after all the tears she had shed, one look from him still had this power over her. The barista called an order, breaking the moment for a second, but neither of them moved. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the glass, as if echoing the storm in her chest. Finally, Daniel's lips parted. Claire held her breath, waiting for the words she thought she might never hear. But nothing came. He closed his mouth again, looked down, and then back at her. The silence dragged on until it was unbearable. What if the answer you've been waiting for refuses to come? Claire leaned back in her chair, trying to steady herself. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. The sound of the chair scraping against the floor felt deafening in the quiet tension between them. He still hadn't answered. He just sat there, across from her, studying her face like it was both familiar and strange at the same time. His expression carried something heavy. Maybe guilt, maybe longing, maybe both. Claire's throat was dry. She wanted to demand answers, to push him for the truth, but fear held her back. What if his reason for being here shattered her completely? What if it was worse than his silence? Her fingers tapped nervously on the cup, though she didn't realize it. She wanted to scream, to ask him everything at once. Why did you leave? Why now? Do you still think of me? Do I still matter? But her voice wouldn't rise above a whisper. What if the moment you've dreamed of turns into your biggest fear? Daniel finally opened his mouth. Claire's breath hitched. This was it. After 3 years of emptiness, she would finally hear his reason. But before he spoke, his eyes softened. And for a second, she saw the boy she once loved, the one who made her believe in forever. That glimpse alone was enough to unravel the walls she had tried so hard to build, and then, just as he drew in a breath to speak, the cafe door swung open. A cold wind swept through as more people entered, breaking the fragile bubble around them. Daniel glanced away for the first time, his jaw tight again. Claire's heart sank. He was holding something back. He looked back at her, silent once more, then leaned forward just slightly, as if he was about to speak the word she had been waiting for. Claire braced herself, every nerve in her body tense, knowing whatever he said next could change everything. Can 3 words reopen wounds you thought had healed? Daniel sat across from Claire, silent, as if searching for courage in the steam rising from her untouched cup. His presence filled the tiny space between them, but his silence cut deeper than any words could. Claire's chest rose and fell, her heart racing faster with each second. She could hear the hum of the cafe around them, the chatter of strangers, the clinking of cups, but all of it blurred into nothing. All she saw was him. He leaned back, his hands tightening into fists in his jacket pockets. And when he finally spoke, his voice was low, rough, like it carried the weight of years. I shouldn't be here. Just 4 words, but they tore through her like glass. What if the voice you missed most becomes the one that breaks you? The sound of his voice was like a ghost, familiar, haunting, pulling her back into nights when he used to call her name with a softness only she knew. But now it wasn't soft. It was broken. Claire's throat tightened. She forced herself to swallow. Then why are you? She asked. Daniel's eyes flickered, like he wasn't ready to answer. His shoulders shifted, restless, like he was fighting with himself. And then slowly he whispered, because I never stopped. His words trailed off, hanging in the air, unfinished, dangerous. Claire's pulse jumped. Never stopped what? Never stopped thinking about her? Never stopped regretting? Or never stopped loving? She wanted him to finish, to say it clearly, but he just stared at the table as if the truth was too heavy to speak. What's worse, the truth you hear or the one left unsaid? Claire's fingers tightened around her cup until her knuckles turned pale. She had waited 3 years for answers, for some kind of explanation. And now, instead of clarity, she was left drowning in half-spoken confessions. Her heart screamed for him to say the words, but her mind warned her to protect herself. She had barely survived his leaving once. Could she survive hearing he still loved her, only to lose him again? Daniel lifted his gaze at last, meeting hers. His eyes were tired, filled with something raw she couldn't name. His lips trembled, but he pressed them shut, as though speaking would unleash something neither of them could take back. The silence between them grew unbearable. Claire couldn't stop herself. Say it, Daniel. Just say it. But he shook his head slightly, his jaw locking. Can love survive the weight of silence? Her chest ached. She wanted to reach across the table, to shake him, to demand the truth. But her body remained still, trapped by the fear of what might come out of his mouth. She thought of the years she had spent piecing herself back together after he left, the nights crying into her pillow, the mornings she forced herself to smile at work, the countless times she whispered his name in her sleep. And now, he sat in front of her, his silence reopening every wound. The rain outside pounded harder, like the sky itself was restless. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders slumping. Claire, he began, his voice low. You don't know how many times I've imagined this. Sitting here, looking at you again, wanting to explain, her lips parted, her breath shaky. Then explain. Tell me why you left. Tell me why you're here now. His eyes darkened, and he pressed his palms flat against the table, as if steadying himself against the weight of his own confession. What if the truth comes too late? Daniel's voice cracked. I thought leaving would protect you. I thought you'd be better off without me. Claire's chest burned. Anger flickered inside her. Better off? Daniel, you vanished. You didn't give me a choice. You just disappeared. He winced at her words, his expression filled with regret. I know, and I've hated myself for it every day since. Claire's breath caught. He looked like a man confessing to a crime, carrying guilt too heavy to bear. But guilt wasn't enough. She needed the whole truth, her eyes locked on his. If you hated yourself, why not come back sooner? Why wait 3 years? Daniel's hands shook slightly. Because I wasn't ready to face you. Because I didn't think you'd forgive me. Because... His voice faltered again, and he stared at the table as though it held the answer. What if the reason you're given doesn't heal you, but wounds you deeper? Claire leaned closer, her voice sharp with pain. You think disappearing protected me? Daniel, it destroyed me. I waited for you. I wondered if I wasn't enough. If I was the reason you left. His eyes filled with something heavy. Sorrow, regret, love, all tangled together. He whispered, You were never the reason. You were the only good thing. That's why I ran. Because I loved you so much and I thought I would ruin you. Her breath hitched. The words struck her, sharp and sweet at once. She wanted to cling to them, to let them heal her. But they hurt more than silence, because they reminded her of what could have been, what was stolen from her by his fear. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. You already ruined me, Daniel, by leaving. What if love returns but the timing is wrong? The cafe felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in on them. People around them laughed, worked, talked, but Claire felt trapped in a bubble of grief and longing. Daniel leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. Claire, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought distance would free you, but all it did was chain me to the memory of you. I've never stopped thinking of you. Not once, her throat tightened. His confession was the kind she had dreamed of hearing, but it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like punishment, because if he had loved her all this time, then why had he stayed away? Why let her drown alone in the silence? She shook her head slowly, whispering, Do you have any idea what those words do to me now? His face crumpled. I know it's late. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I had to come back. I had to tell you. What if the truth is only the beginning of more secrets? For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Their eyes locked, two souls circling each other, drawn together and torn apart by the same force. Claire wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him to leave, to never come back. But she also wanted to reach for his hand, to let herself believe again. The storm outside raged on, lightning flickering against the cafe windows. Claire wiped her eyes quickly, refusing to let him see her break. And then, Daniel's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it just for a second. But that second was enough. Claire caught the name flashing on the screen. A woman's name. Her stomach dropped. Claire's voice came out as a whisper, trembling. Who is Emily? Daniel froze. His face paled. And in that moment, she knew. His return carried more than just regret. It carried a secret that could shatter her all over again. What if the truth you've been waiting for is the one that breaks you? Claire's world tilted when she saw the name on Daniel's phone. Emily. One word. One name. It shouldn't have meant anything. But the way Daniel's face changed told her it meant everything. His hand moved quickly, locking the screen, shoving the phone into his pocket. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to believe it was nothing. A friend, a coworker, but her heart already knew. Something was wrong. Something was hiding behind his eyes. Daniel, she whispered. Who is she? His jaw tightened. He leaned back in the chair, rubbing his hands over his face like he wanted to disappear. Claire's stomach churned. The silence was worse than an answer. What if love and betrayal live in the same heart? When he finally spoke, his voice was low, broken. She's someone in my life now. The words pierced through her like a knife. Someone in his life now. The man who left her 3 years ago had come back. Not empty-handed, but carrying someone else's name. Claire forced herself to breathe, though each breath felt heavy. Then why are you here? Why sit in front of me, saying all this, if you belong to someone else? Daniel's eyes lifted to hers. They were full of pain, but also something else. Longing. Because I couldn't stay away. Because before I moved forward with her, I had to face you. I had to tell you the truth. Her throat tightened. The truth? She asked bitterly. Or the version of it you think I can handle? Can a confession heal, or does it only deepen the wound? Daniel exhaled, his shoulders slumping. Claire, I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I loved you too much. I was terrified of it. I thought I would ruin your life, hold you back, drag you into the mess that I was. So I convinced myself that walking away was the kindest thing I could do. Claire shook her head slowly, her heart pounding. His words hit her with force. For 3 years, she had carried the belief that she wasn't enough, that she was too small for his dreams. And now, here he was, telling her she had been too much for him to handle. Her eyes burned, but she blinked the tears back. You thought leaving me without a word was kindness? He closed his eyes, his face tight with regret. It was the biggest mistake of my life. Every day since then I've thought of you. Every single day. Claire's chest ached. His words were the ones she had longed for, prayed for in lonely nights. But instead of healing, they made her bleed again, because even if he had thought of her all this time, he hadn't come back until now. And now, there was someone else. What if the person you love belongs to another life now? Her voice trembled as she asked, So what am I to you now, Daniel? A memory, a mistake? A test before you go back to her? Daniel's expression cracked. You're not a mistake. You never were. You were everything. You still are. Claire's hands clenched in her lap, nails pressing into her skin. His words felt like fire. Burning, consuming, impossible to ignore. She hated how her heart still reacted, how it wanted to believe, even when her mind screamed not to. Then why her? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. If I'm still everything, why Emily? Daniel looked away, his jaw working as if the answer pained him. Because I tried to move on. I tried to build something, to quiet the ache of losing you. But nothing, no one, has ever been you. Claire's chest tightened until it was hard to breathe. She didn't know whether to scream or cry. Every word he spoke felt like both a confession of love and a confession of betrayal. What if the past you long for can't exist in the present? The rain outside beat harder, matching the storm inside her chest. Claire stared at him, her heart torn between two impossible choices. To believe him, or to finally let go. She leaned forward, her voice sharp, desperate. Daniel, do you hear yourself? You're sitting here, telling me you still love me, while another woman is waiting for you to choose her. Do you know what that makes me feel? His eyes filled with tears. He nodded slowly. I know. And I hate myself for it. But I had to see you, Claire. I had to know if what I felt was real, or if it was just guilt and memory. And now I know. Her stomach flipped. Know what? She asked, though part of her already feared the answer. Daniel's lips trembled as he whispered, that it's still you. It's always been you. What if the words you dreamed of come at the wrong time? Claire's breath caught. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Those were the words she had longed for, the ones she had imagined him saying in 1,000 different ways. But instead of joy, she felt devastation. Because now those words didn't mean forever. They meant impossible. Tears filled her eyes, finally spilling down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. She let him see. Let him watch the cost of his confession. Daniel, she whispered, her voice breaking. Do you realize what you've done? You left me to heal, to rebuild, to learn how to live without you. And now, when I've finally learned how to stand on my own, you come back with this? With love tied to someone else's name? Daniel's own eyes shone, his face pale. I know it's unfair. I know it's cruel. But I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to tell you, even if it ruins me. Claire pressed a hand against her chest, trying to steady the storm inside. She didn't know if she wanted to run out the door or reach across the table and hold him. Both desires tore at her, splitting her heart in two. What if love is both the cure and the poison? The cafe around them faded into background noise. The sound of rain, the scent of coffee, the chatter of strangers, none of it mattered. All that existed was the truth between them. Daniel leaned forward, his voice raw. Claire, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to want me back. I just needed you to know the truth. I left because I was weak, and I came back because I couldn't keep living with the lie that I didn't love you. I do. I always have. Claire's tears blurred her vision, her throat too tight to speak. For years she had dreamed of hearing these words. But in this moment, they felt less like a dream and more like a punishment. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "And what happens to Emily now, Daniel? What happens to the life you built with her?" Daniel's face fell, his silence answering more than words ever could. Claire's heart pounded as she leaned back, her voice cold despite the tears streaming down her face. "You can't have us both. So tell me, Daniel, who will you choose?" His breath caught. He stared at her, silent once more. And in that silence, Claire knew the next words out of his mouth could break her forever. What if the words you've been waiting for come too late? Claire's voice trembled as it left her lips. "You can't have us both. So who will you choose?" The question hung heavy in the air, cutting through the storm outside, through the noise of the cafe, through the silence that seemed to choke them both. Daniel sat frozen, his eyes locked on hers, his hands tightening into fists on the table. For the first time since he sat down, he looked like a man completely cornered. Claire's chest rose and fell, her heart beating so hard it hurt. She didn't want to wait for his answer, but she needed it. She deserved it. What if the answer you want is the one you fear the most? Daniel's lips parted, but no sound came out. He closed his eyes, as though searching for the courage to speak. His silence stretched longer, and each second felt like a knife twisting in Claire's chest. Finally, he whispered, "Claire, I don't know." Her whole body froze. 3 years of waiting, hours of confession, 1,000 unspoken words between them, and all he could say now was, "I don't know." Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream, but her voice came out barely audible. "Then why come back? Why tear me open again if you're just going to say that?" Daniel's eyes glistened. "Because I had to see you. Because I couldn't marry her without knowing what this was, without knowing if you still felt it too." Claire's hands shook. Anger and heartbreak collided inside her chest. "So I'm just some test? Some final check before you promise yourself to her? What if love returns but not as you imagined?" Daniel reached forward suddenly, his hands trembling as they brushed the table's edge. "No, Claire. You're not a test. You're everything I ever wanted. I don't know how to undo the damage I caused. I don't know how to make this right." Claire stared at him, tears clouding her vision. His words should have filled her with hope, but instead they felt like chains. Because no matter how much he claimed to love her, there was still Emily. There was still a promise he had already made to another. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "You can't keep both lives, Daniel. You can't keep both hearts. If you love me, then why is she still in the picture?" Daniel dropped his head into his hands, his body shaking with silent conflict. The weight of his choices pressed down on him, visible in every breath he took. Claire's heart twisted painfully. Part of her wanted to comfort him, to remind him that she had once been his safe place. But another part of her, the stronger part, knew she couldn't save him this time. He had to choose. What if love means letting go even when it hurts? Claire rose from her chair slowly, her legs unsteady but her voice firmer now. "I can't be the woman you come back to when you're unsure. I can't be the second choice you hold in the shadows. I deserve more than that, Daniel. I deserved it then, and I deserve it now." Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide with desperation. "Claire, don't leave. Not like this, please. I came here because I love you. That hasn't changed. It's the only thing that's never changed." Her heart ached at his words. Part of her wanted to believe them, to run into his arms and erase the years of pain. But she knew better. Words were not enough. Not anymore. She took a deep breath, her voice breaking but steady. "If you love me, then prove it. Choose me. Or let me go for good." What if the choice between two hearts breaks them both? Daniel stood now, his chair scraping back against the floor. His height, his presence, his nearness, it all overwhelmed her. For a moment, it felt like time had rewound, like they were young again, standing on the edge of forever. But then reality rushed back in. The storm outside raged, and so did the storm within. He reached out, his hand hovering close to hers, but he didn't touch. His voice cracked. "Claire, I want to choose you. God, I want to. But I can't erase the life I started building with her. She doesn't deserve to be destroyed because of my mistakes." Claire's tears spilled faster, "And I don't deserve to be destroyed again because of your fear." Her words cut through him. He stepped back as though her pain had struck him harder than any blow. What if timing is the cruelest part of love? They stood there, staring at each other. Two souls torn between what they wanted and what reality demanded. Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. If I had been braver back then, if I had stayed, everything would be different. Claire shook her head slowly. But you didn't. And now we're here. The weight of years pressed down on them both. The memories of what they once were collided with the truth of what they had become. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The cafe felt too small for the storm that raged between them. What if goodbye is the only way to save yourself? Claire picked up her bag, her hands trembling. Her heart screamed to stay, to fight for the love that still pulsed between them. But her mind told her the truth. If she stayed, she would only break all over again. Her voice shook as she whispered, "You've made your choice, Daniel. By not choosing, you've already chosen. And it's not me." Daniel's face crumpled, his eyes filled with panic. "No, Claire, don't say that. Please, I'll fix this. I'll find a way." But Claire shook her head, tears streaming. Some things can't be fixed. Some things are broken forever. She turned toward the door, her steps unsteady but certain. What if love comes back into your life only to leave again? The bell above the cafe door chimed as she pushed it open, the cold night air rushing in to meet her. Rain splashed against her skin, but she didn't care. She welcomed it. At least the rain couldn't lie. Behind her, she heard Daniel call her name, his voice desperate, raw, almost breaking. She paused for a heartbeat, her hand gripping the doorframe. For that one moment, she wanted to turn back, to run into his arms, to believe in a future they might still have. But then she remembered Emily. She remembered 3 years of silence. She remembered the ache of being left behind, and so she stepped out into the storm, leaving him behind once more. As the door closed between them, Daniel sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. His phone buzzed again, Emily's name glowing on the screen. He stared at it, torn, broken, knowing the next call he answered would decide everything. His future, Claire's future, and the love that still burned between them.